Right, we're getting back to the Supra again. It's been a while since my last update, but as you can see, the engine is still on the ground on that little trolley that I made in the last video. I've been doing quite a fair bit of work on my house, so that's why I've not updated any of these videos in a while. But the next stage for the engine is obviously to put the gearbox and the engine back together, and in order to do that I need a clutch. So good old Uniclutch here. I have had a little bit of an issue with the Uniclutch, I'm not going to lie, and I'll get into that in this video. But for now, I'm just going to show you the initial pieces that I've got. So in that little box that I just showed you, the pizza box as I call it, you've got your little kit, you've got a few stickers and bits and pieces in there. There is your adapter ring, which basically centralizes your clutch onto your flywheel. And in this little biscuit tin, as I call it, in the middle there, you've got some more information and all of the splines in which you are going to need to install it onto your gearbox, input, splice, spline, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so let's that's that bit. And then in here is obviously the clutch itself. So I've gone for the Uniclutch Red, which is the track version. Basically got a little bit more pressure within the clutch system itself, because I'm going to be running a little bit higher sort of horsepower than what it was from standard. So I thought I'd go with that one. It's supposed to be a nice clean clutch for driving. It's not too harsh, it's not too stiff on the pedal. So I thought, sod it, I'll go for the red one. And then it's future proofed. So yes, so let's get to it, shall we? So believe it or not, I have actually done a test fit of this clutch system to make sure that it fits, and it currently does. But I had a bit of an issue, so I've got to say a big shout out to JDM Garage, because I actually bought this clutch probably, oh God knows, 4 months ago, maybe longer. And I've only just gotten round to fitting it, and there was a mix-up on their system or something along those lines, where basically they supplied me the clutch, but it was for the NA engine and not the turbo engine with the 6-speed gearbox, which I've got, so it just didn't fit at all. But testament to them, they've swapped it out and got me the correct one. So yeah, I've got to say a massive shout out to JDM Garage there for sorting me out, done me a solid. So again, thank you very much. So let's get to it. Now, a lot of you will know that the Uniclutch system is a push system clutch. Predominantly they do pull types, but not so sort of often as they do push. Now, the Supra engine, obviously the 2JZ engine that I've got here, runs with the, in my situation, with the 6-speed Getrag or Getrag, however you want to pronounce it, gearbox. Now inside here there used to be a hydraulic slave sat here, which pushes through this little hole in the side of the gearbox casing and pushes a fork where my hand is, which activates the pull type, because as it pushes from there, it pivots on these 2 bolts here and actually pushes that direction, which pulls the sort of the bearing on the clutch away from the engine, which disengages it. But obviously the Uniclutch runs a push type system, so all that has to change. Now, in order to do that, I did a bit of research online, and I managed to find myself this, which is basically a copy of a Tilton slave cylinder, basically. The Tilton ones, don't get me wrong, they are a nice piece of kit, but they are, I think for the same kit, they're about 500 quid, just shy of, and this was less than half of that, so I can't grumble there really. So it comes with its own little adapter plate, as you can see. Now this did have, where this half hole here is that you can see, and then again a quarter of the way around is another half hole. Now it did have tabs on there, so I had to put it in my lathe and turn them off, otherwise it wouldn't fit in my gearbox. So when it's installed in the gearbox like so, you can see it fits nice and snugly now within that recess at the bottom of the box. So without that, these lugs were catching. You can get in a little like an adapter plate that would negate that, but seeing as I've got a a lathe there. I just decided to chop them off because I don't really need them. So that's that. What's next? I don't actually know, my head's just gone poof. But anyway, the next thing I suppose is the flywheel. Now the flywheel, my standard flywheel, which is down here, this one. Now this is what they call the dual mass flywheel. So as you can see, there are two separate plates. You've got your inner plate system and your outer plate. Now that thing is as heavy as sin, and it's heavily worn. I say it's heavily worn. Normally you can use these as just the holder for the Uniclutch, because a Uniclutch is a concealed unit and you don't actually need to use your flywheel as a friction plate. But because that is excessively worn, there's too much play in it, so unfortunately I can't use it. So I've got this. So this is a brand new flywheel from DC Competitions, I believe. So it's a very nice piece of kit. It's not quite as heavy as the standard one. I think this one is around about, I think it was said it was 9 kilos, I can't remember. Whereas that one is around about, I can't remember what this one was off the top of my head, but I think this is about 14. So it's quite a significant weight reduction, which I didn't really want to do because lighter flywheel, you get faster RPM pickup, but your drivability starts to drop off. And also with it being a single mass, you get a lot more noise through your gearbox, which I didn't really want, but it's the only option I have. So I could have bought a brand new dual mass, but they're stupidly expensive, and to be honest, I don't think I'm going to be within its limits power wise. So let's just get to the next stage, shall we? So the next stage is basically fitting of the adapter plate to your clutch and vice versa, and also getting the flywheel installed onto the engine. That is probably the first thing to do because everything gets measured off there, but I'm just going to show you a few things first before I do that. So the joy of my slave cylinder is the fact that it's actually fully adjustable within itself. So as you can see on here, it's threaded. So this threaded part, obviously, as you saw just before, bolts to the inside of your gearbox, and then this part is actually threaded onto there, which I can't do one-handed because you've got to get the threads nice and square. So once this is in the bottom of your gearbox, you'll see that the space between the end face here of the slave cylinder and the mating faces of your clutch, there's a specific gap in which they want to be before you start going. So normally you would have to shim these out to get this, which is normally a fixed unit, into the correct position, whereas I don't need to shim it because it's got a thread here which basically negates the need for a shim. That is its shim basically, and it has a locking pin which goes into place, if you can see that. So that locking pin goes into place and holds that slave cylinder once you've set it in the correct place. So I'll show you if you are just using a standard hydraulic slave, and then you can see sort of what measurements you need to be taking. So the flywheel, when it is installed onto the engine here, it sits, on my measurements, 2.5 to 3 millimeters inside of this bell housing of this flanged face here. So as you can see, this flanged face fits flush against that one. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Yeah, so all measurements are going to be taken from this face minus 2.5 millimeters, or plus 2.5 millimeters, because the flywheel actually sits inside there. So it's adding to this, not taking away. So from that face, all measurements plus 2.5 millimeters. So if you imagine this flywheel is now bolted up to the engine, it's recessed on these teeth by that 2.5 millimeters, as I mentioned before. The next job to do is to get your clutch mated up to your flywheel, which I can't get out of this box one-handed, so just bear with me. So there you go, that's easier with two hands. So you put your clutch onto the surface of your flywheel, and if you were to take a straight edge, so I've got this ruler, I do have another one somewhere, where have I put that? So yeah, so I've got the straight edge, I've got my ruler here, so basically, imagine that face that we're butting up against now is the bell housing. So from there, my ruler's not long enough really for doing this. Let me pop that down on there so it doesn't wobble. So yes, you would take your ruler across the flat part of the top of your clutch. I'm going to do it to the edge here so you can see it a little bit clearer. And then this ruler to the face there, and you would measure the height in which it comes to, which in my circumstance here is, what we're looking at there, 8.5 centimetres. So from the base here to the very top face of that is 8.5 centimetres, and then you're also going to do the same measurement from the top there. Again, you're just going to have to bear with me whilst I do this with two hands, to the top of the petals on the clutch, which there is 8 millimetres. Reading that, 5, 6, 7, about 7.5, 8 mil. So let me just write those down. So there we've got your flywheel. So from the surface of the cardboard here basically to the top of the clutch, which is to this face here, was 87 millimeters minus that 2.5 millimeters that I said that this flywheel sits inside that bell housing. So you get a measurement there of 84.5. The half really doesn't matter. We're not talking massive race spec terms here, so the half can disappear, so make it 84 mil, makes things a lot easier. So I'm going to scrub that out, turn that into 84, gives us a bit more wiggle room. So from your clutch petals, I should say, to the top of your clutch, so from this face to these petals is 8 millimeters. So that's noted there. All this will sort of make sense in a minute as to why I'm making these measurements, because once I put this into the gearbox and it's fully stretched down mode, I'll do another measurement and then you can see where I'm going with it. So the next job is to just place this inside the gearbox, and then we'll start taking the next measurement. So for now I've just put the one bolt in the top of there, but as you can see, that slave is now fitted on the input shaft from the engine to the gearbox. And as you can see, all you got to do is rotate the whole assembly, and that is now working its way towards what will be the clutch on the gear on the engine. So I'm going to wind that all the way back until it stops, which is there. It's just snug, and then just back it off slightly so it's not touching. The next thing to do is put a straight edge across the front of this gearbox and take a measurement from that line to the face of this hydraulic release bearing. So you put a straight edge across bell housing and your ruler against there. Normally I would use a vernier, but mine has just decided to give up the ghost and break. So that is currently reading for me here 83 millimeters. So let's go and write that down. So the next measurement to take is your 84 that we had here. Take away the 8 that we had on the clutch pedal, so that minus that gives us 76 millimeters. So you got 76 to 83. So 83 millimeters minus 76 millimeters gives you a difference of 7 millimeters. So basically, once that clutch is installed on the engine and the gearbox is then inserted over the top of it, it should give us 7 millimeters of clearance from those clutch petals to the surface of this slave cylinder. So in real life, if you didn't have an adjustable one like mine, you'd want to be running a 5mm spacer there, so that you're giving yourself a good 2 to 3 millimeters worth of clearance from your slave cylinder pushing against them petals to it touching, basically. Because as the clutch wears, those petals move out slightly, so you don't want it permanently pushing against your slave cylinder harshly, so you need to leave a bit of slack so it can move backwards. I think the spec recommends 2.5 to 3 millimeters worth of clearance before it engages, even touches the petals. So with 7 milli spacer there, I've got quite a good margin of free space. So what I'll do is I get all that lot bolted up, get it installed onto the engine, and then I will show you it later down the line, basically. And also, I believe when you click on your Uniclutch install instructions, it gives you all of the specs, how much movement you should be putting on the clutch pedals, this, that, and the other. So yeah, so I'll show you that bit now. And just a little disclaimer, before you start doing any of this, do not torque up any of your bolts. Just do everything nipped, just so it holds it in place, because a lot of the bolts that are installed in this kit, in fact all of the bolts installed in the Uniclutch kit, are torque to yield. So as soon as you've torqued them once, that's it. You're supposed to be taking them out and replacing them. Same goes for flywheel bolts. Don't go torquing them up to full spec, because if you need to take them back out again, the torque to yield, so you're going to have to be replacing them, unless you just want to wing it, which isn't exactly ideal, is it? So right, let's get to the actual install of the Uniclutch. So first things first, this box, obviously you've already got your clutch out. This box, open it up, and as you can see inside you have this folder here. Stay there, box lid, you pest. Just let me slide that down there so it opens. There we go. So yes, you've got the box. Inside your box you've got this, which has got a few stickers. Nothing other than that in it. I'm pretty sure there isn't anyway. Oh, you've got a few stickers and a couple of air fresheners and this, that and the other. Not interested in that just at the moment, so I'll move that over to one side. There is a QR code on there for the instructions, but there is also another one on the inside of this box. So all you need to do is scan that and put in the details for what you need, what your car model is, what clutch you're using, and basically what flywheel you're using as well. So inside the box, as you can see, I have trial fitted everything, but I've not torqued them up yet. That's why these would normally be coated in a nice bit of lock thread or thread locker, whatever you want to call it. So yes, so in here you've got install to tell you which way to put that spline into the clutch and not to get it wrong, because if you get it wrong you can damage not only your clutch spline but also the splines on your gearbox, and that can make a rather big mess, or expensive mess in my case. So yeah, let's get to that, shall we? We'll do that first. Now in this kit I've got 3 splines, only one of them fits. They are for different gearboxes I believe, but mine's the V160, so you basically just have to get them out and try them. So you get that on there, try it on your spline, make sure it fits, which that one does. There's no rattle to it, it's nice and snug. So that is the spline which I require. It's pretty self-explanatory, because if I get, let me try and get that one out of there, try and put that one on, it just physically will not go on, so you know that one is no good for your engine. So basically the next thing to do is by following these instructions. As you can see, there is a flared end and a non-flared end. So this is your flared end, so that wants to be face down inside your clutch. So if at any point you are unsure, the QR code's there, there's one there, there's one here. The QR codes are everywhere, so you can't miss them. So basically I've scanned this one and that's what you get. So once you've scanned that, you then go through your instructions, your fitment kit, da. So you go all the way down to the bottom here till it says start now. So click on that. My signal in here is terrible, by the way, so you might just have to wait for this to upload. Or I'll move closer to the door, because that's where I seem to get all my signal. Come on, find vehicle. So I'm just going to put in there, so I didn't mean to press that one. find vehicle, Supra, go. And then what it does is it brings up a list. So there's the bi-turbo, there's bi-turbo, there's the normal one, and I think there might even be the A80, the A90. These two here are the sleekers, obviously because it's a sleeker in the listing. So mine is 2JZ-GTE 93, so I'm pretty sure it's that one. So I'm going to go with that one. So once that loads, scroll down. Mine is the Uniclutch track. So you select that, click next. Wait for this to load. Now, what I'm using is, with this one, I'm not using the factory one. I'm not using Uniclutch's own. I suppose I'm using a non-factory flywheel, so just for purpose here I'm going to click that one. What it'll tell you now is what spacers are required and this, that and the other, if you need to install them, basically. Oh, for all intents and purposes I know mine fits, so I'm just going to use the OE flywheel. Click on that. Come on, told you my internet in here is rubbish. Acknowledge and accept. So when you come down here, you've got your car model, your Supra, blah 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 blah, the clutch in which you're fitting, excuse me, all this sort of stuff. You've got your prepping, handling, installation, troubleshooting. Just keep on going through the list until you get down to step 1, step 2. Keep on going. Installation. Before you install, register your clutch, which I'll show you how to do that later on. So this is showing you how to install that spline, which I think I told you in that last little clip incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure I got it right. So this spline, looking at that drawing, is like this. So as you can see, there's your splines. You got that collar. So that collar goes onto your drive shaft, which is on your gearbox, which in your clutch is that way down. So that drops into there once you get it located. I'm trying to do this looking through a camera, it's not easy. There we go. So that's that into there, and then right, so that's that sat inside there. The next thing to do is your little C-clip. So get yourself a set of C-clip pliers. I'm trying to do this again by looking through a camera and not at the actual job, which is always tricky. Pick that up, that goes down inside there and locks that into place. It'd help if I got it all the way in, wouldn't it? Again, I'm struggling to see it. That's it. Pop that down. There we go. So that is that C-clip fully installed into the little recess that's in there and just stops that internal splice from coming out, as shown by the pictures. So that's that done. Again, spacers, if you are going to be using some spacers, I'm pretty sure in here it'll tell you which ones to use, but for my purposes here I don't need to use any. The bolts are saying to use some 243 to the countersunk flywheels, which is that's your Loctite in which they want you to use. Now for my flywheel bolts I've got some 271, which is the red stuff, and I'm pretty sure the normal stuff, I can't remember which type this is now, but I'm pretty sure the blue is for these bolts for the adapter wheel, which I'll show you in just a sec. So like I've said to you earlier on in the video, bolts are torque to yield, so if you've tightened them up you need to order a new set, unfortunately. So the next thing we need to do is this here clutch kit. Basically this is an adapter kit which adapts this clutch to fit your flywheel correctly, locates it centrally. And that looks just like that. So, next thing to do, turn your clutch face upside down. Right, so now I've got my clutch upside down. Ignore the piece of masking tape, that's just so that none of you nasty lot decide to register the clutch in your name before I get a chance to do so. So yes, the next thing to do is the adapter plate, which will only go on one way up. Well, it will go on two ways up, but you need to make sure that the countersunk faces are to this side, not the other side, because otherwise your bolts won't. They'll go in, but this won't sit flush to your flywheel face. So, as you can see, the bolts are countersunk, so they go into those countersunk holes, like so, and you run them down until you torque them up. So I'm going to get some Loctite put on those and then get them torqued down, and I'll show you the end result. So just going to run all them down. I've Loctited all the threads, just in case now, running them down just till they stop. Do them in a star pattern, and then you know you're getting a uniform pull down on the ring. Keep going. That's that one. I'll do this one next. And keep going like so. So now that's all them just run down snug. It says to torque load them to 22 foot-pounds or 30 Newton meters. So I've got my torque wrench. I've just set that to 22 foot-pounds. So now just to go around all of these and give them a good torquing down, which is going to be tricky to do because this wants to spin. So unfortunately I'm going to have to put the camera down. Right, so that's all of those torqued down. The next thing to do is the flywheel and get that installed onto the engine basically. So let's get to it. Right, so next job, make sure that all the surfaces, your mating faces, they're all clean of debris so that everything sits nice and flat. So that's pretty clean. I've just done the engine, so we are pretty much good to go. So the flywheel bolts use a different type of Loctites. This is the red 271, so this is classed as a permanent, but you can heat this up and to get it released basically. But oh shit, that came out faster than I thought. So I'll get some of that on these threads and get them ready to go in. That's that. Simple as that. Next job, put flywheel on. Can you see that there? So that goes on like so. Right, that's them all down nice and solid. Next thing to do is to get them torqued. So I believe the factory or ARP bolts for this are 70 inch about foot-pound. I can't remember the foot-pound. So I'm going to go in to start with at 40 and then I'm going to go up to 70. But I think I'm going to have to find a way of holding this basically to stop the crank rotating whilst I torque these. Excuse me again, so just bear with me whilst I find something to hold it. Ah, that was more stressful than I wanted it to be. Because I'm getting older and unfit. So yeah, at least that's on. And now the next thing to do is just to put the flywheel on like I have done there. So let me get this little block of wood. So basically this flywheel, as you can see, there are 3 location dowels on it. You're not quite in that top view there, but there's another one at the top. Now these location dowels, when you look at your adapter ring that is on your clutch here, you can see that there's a letter B there, a letter A, a letter C, another B. So those letters, depending on your install instructions tell you which ones of these lugs you should be putting in said lettered hole, if you know what I mean. But because I'm using a DC clutch, not the standard one, the standard one said to use slot C. So if I install these on slot C, as you can see, slot C, it all locates up nice. It's all installed, it's all central, but unfortunately these lugs here are directly in front of where my bolts want to go, so it becomes an absolute pain in the backside to install. But luckily there are 3 other holes which are in the same position, they're just not labelled as C. So what I'm going to do is just rotate that around. They are in the exact same position somehow, I don't know how, but now I've got a clear hole to the flywheel in which I can install my bolts. So I'm going to get on with that. So as the Uniclutch kit didn't come with the adapter bolts for the ring to this flywheel, I've had to supply my own. So again, come on, I'm running out this one. Need to get some more. There we go. So these want blue on it. They don't want the high strength red. It's a bit too much for this application. So I'll put some blue on those, and then put them on there. Bottom one is there, nice and snug. That one to there, done. And then this one, wherever it is down there. So that's them on there. Get them torqued up to the same torque as the adapter plate to the clutch, which was 25 foot-pounds, I think it was. This torque wrench is still set to the same, so we added. So that's that one. I can't believe there's now to hold. That's that one. And this one, that's that one and that one. Right, so there we go, that's all 3 of those torqued up. And the Uniclutch fully installed onto the flywheel. So the next job is mating up the gearbox and the associated parts. So before I go ahead and make these together, I need to put the remaining 3 bolts into position. But I'm going to get some Loctite on these and get them installed properly. And then I know that that plate is never going to come undone on its own. Like so. And there we have it. Now then, where's that locking pin? Now this is that locking pin I was mentioning before. So what happens is you'll wind this out to your set position, and this locates inside that dowel. If I do it up at the top, you better see it, and then that will screw into there, which now stops that from rotating once it's fully torqued up. So I'll take that out of there for now because I don't need it just yet. Luckily I'll be able to get my hand in here in order to do it once the clutch is in. Sort of. So let me get the lid put back on this and then we'll go from there. So now from here you can see the measurements that was taken before. From this face here to the face of the bell housing gives you that measurement, which gives you the gap from the front face of these pedals to the front face of this, so that you've got enough space basically before you even try and make this up, because if that is all the way back and it is already going to be touching the face of your clutch, then there is no point in putting that clutch and gearbox together, because it'll just mess everything up. So I'm just going to offer this back up together loosely just so I can show you what I mean by that, and then it should hopefully be pull it apart again, put a bit of grease and stuff on that input shaft, and then we are pretty much finished. So this is the fun bit. He says, I fucking hate doing this part, so I'm going to put that there, this bit here, grab hold of that, shimmy it up, shimmy that up. Right, make sure your fingers are out of the way, that can slide. So, oh, can't bloody slide though, can it? There we go. So the next job is to try and just gently persuade these together without trapping your fingers, because that would be a disaster. Come on, dowels. So that's just holding. Let me get a bigger socket set. 19. And the long bar. And this. Did I get a 19 then? 17 do this. Right, I'm not going to run this all the way up because it just makes my life harder. Try to separate it again later on. So I'll just leave a small gap. So as you can see there's a small gap, maybe 2mm there, 1.5, something like that. But if you look inside there, you can see the slave cylinder and you can see the clutch. Let me get a torch and you can see it clearer. So there you can see the face of the release bearing to the pedals on the clutch. I am looking through the screen of the camera here, so I can't really see that clearly myself because I'm upside down. So as you can see, the gap there is probably in the region of around about 10mm or so. Let me get stood back up. So if you remember my original measurement, so all of that deducted came to about 7mm. So obviously with that gap in the gearbox there, which is about 2mm or so, that is almost spot on. So that there would normally have been your shim if you needed to shim out for like a solid shim on the back of that slave cylinder. So I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, I just need to make sure now I can get my hand in there and run up the basically that locking bolt wherever I've put it, which is on the floor down here. So I just need to make sure that I can actually do that bolt up before I go any further, because I might have to run these bolts up all the way, back it off by the 2mm that I said you need the gap from the face of the slave to the clutch, and then install this after when I pull this box apart. But I'm just gonna have a quick look now. Right, so as you can see, that locking bolt, I can't even get it started. So I need to back it all the way back down there so I can get that locking bolt in and then sort of screw it all the way back out again. So as you can see, I've left about a 2.5–3mm gap on the face of the slave there. So what I might do just is strip it all back out and go from there. Makes it a lot easier on me. Right, so it's time to strip that gearbox off again so we can have a look. So, first things first, torch out of the way so I don't get blinded, and then back these off. There we go. And there we go. So that's now back apart. So I backed this out a little bit more than we needed to, so that it's as near as damn it on one of those location dowels, which is about there. So I'm happy with that now. Basically that's about all I can do. So I'm going to get some grease put on these, and then I'll leave it for tomorrow. I'm going to get the gearbox all lined up properly and fully bolted up, and then it's pretty much ready to rock and roll and get it in the car, which will be a first, because I think the last time this engine was in that car was about 10 years ago. So it's been a while. So yeah, tomorrow morning is a new day, fresh head, and let's do it properly. Alright, so it's the next day from that little clip. So the next job is the grease. As you can see, Uniclutch supply you with their own grease to go on the input shaft to the gearbox. So I'm just going to get that put on, and then we can get this gearbox mounted up to the engine, and then it's pretty much finished. Right, so there we go, greased that input shaft. Let's just get them mated up. Right. So there we go, it's all bolted back up. There's a few more bolts I do need to put in, but for now that's holding it good and solid. So yeah, engine, gearbox mated, they are ready to go back in the car. So one more last little job to do, which just makes my life a bit easier in the long run, is the thermostat. So obviously that goes on the engine down here on the lower neck. So whilst that's easily accessible down here, I might as well replace it. So as you can see, the bugger all in it now, apart from an O-ring for said thermostat. So let's get on with changing that. So yeah, so I went for the Mishimoto thermostat. No particular reason really, other than it was on a sale. So I got it, I think this one was about 7 or 8 quid. So yeah, let's get this installed. Pretty straightforward. Can't remember which way up they go, so I'm just going to have a quick look whether that goes into the coolant body or whether it sits into the lower neck. I'm just going to check that, and then I'll get back to you. Didn't take much checking, because if you actually try and put the thermostat into the lower water neck that way, as you can see, it doesn't go in, so it'll only go in that way up. So that makes your life a lot easier. So the thermostat's just a case of pushing it into that recess. It's got its own gasket to seal it, so you just push it in. That's about it really. I just offer it back up to the housing in which it lives, and then run the nuts up. Simple as that. Right, so next job to do is to get the starter motor thrown in, and because once this engine and everything's in the engine bay, you've got a firewall coming down here, you've got your suspension turret basically round here, so it just becomes a bit of a faff to get at. So whilst everything's nice and accessible, I'm going to crack on, install that onto here where it wants to live, and then we're good to go. So yeah, that's about it really. That's about all I can do for now. So I'm going to leave the video there, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for watching. So we'll hopefully we'll see you soon with a bit of a install, hopefully. So yeah, watch this space. And again, thanks for watching. See you soon.